Good morning. Today we're going to dig into chapter 6 of John. John was one of the 12 disciples right on the scene with Jesus. These are his recollections. And sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. That is the Sea of Tiberias. So John, recognizing he's got potentially a Roman audience here as well. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. So that tells us Jesus has been doing a lot of healing, not just this guy at the pool of Bethesda. I'm sorry. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where should we buy bread for all these people to eat?" Verse 6, he asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. What a great teacher, huh? He sees his situation and he says, this is my chance to teach my boys a little bit. And so he takes that opportunity. Philip answered him, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Probably accurate, right? Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Andrew is just, we're going to see his name pop up time and again. He loves to introduce people to Jesus, and he brings this boy small barley loaves. It's almost like a bun, right? Or a roll. It's not a loaf of bread like we think of it, but kid was probably going to have a fish sandwich, okay? A filet-o-fish, if you will. Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. Love it. Don't waste food, man. Eat it all up. I'm with you, Jesus. Make sure that if there is food left over, that it's well cared for. And so they gathered them and filled 12 baskets, one for each disciple, with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, so again, that key word sign, we had water turning to wine, we've had another sign, and this is a sign. And the people are starting to get it. They began to say, surely this is the prophet who was to come into the world. Okay, Jesus had just been talking about how if you understood Moses, you would understand me because he was teaching about me. Well, this reference to the prophet goes back to Moses, where he says, there will be a prophet like me who comes into the world. Listen to him. And so this is the people clicking in after seeing this sign of the of fish sandwiches, if you will. Everybody got a fish sandwich or two. They understand, where the leaders didn't, that this is the prophet. But they don't have the right content to put into that. Jesus, knowing they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. So they don't understand what it means to be the prophet. They're thinking, fish sandwiches forever, man. Let's do it. Verse 16. When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, where they got into a boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. And Jesus told them to do this. We find from the other eyewitness accounts. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. These guys, Peter and Andrew, James and John, knew the lake, so they could start off, I guess, in the dark. And that's something I'd want to do on a boat. But I suppose if I knew the body of water, I could do that. And these guys had fished it since they were kids. A strong wind was blowing and the waters grew rough. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water. And they were frightened. Oh my goodness, yeah, the wind and the waves aren't really scaring them. But what are we seeing here? The Bible's great this way. In my opinion, you get very human reactions all the way through. But he said to them, it is I, don't be afraid. Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. So Jesus saved him some time. How do we understand these things? Fair question, because we just don't see things like this in general in our reality. Though I heard a story, an account just last week about some folks in traffic, and they were a fraction of a second from hitting the car in front of them, and all of a sudden the car made a move the car ahead of them made a move that it should not have been able to make without divine assistance, and they did not pile into the car in front of them. So maybe we do sort of see things like that if we're followers of Jesus and there is an emergency. Things like that can happen, right? The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite shore of the lake realized that only one boat had been there and that Jesus had not entered it with his disciples, but that they had gone away alone. Then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor the disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the lake, verse 25, they asked him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" Jesus answered, "Very truly I tell you, you're looking for me not because you saw the signs I performed," again that key word, "but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval." So there's the claim. If God's real, Jesus has this God's seal of approval as the Son of Man. Then they asked him, What must we do to do the works that God requires? So they pick up on this. Do not work for food that spoils. What must we do to do the works that God requires? Jesus answered, the work of God is this, to believe in the one that he has sent, to trust in the one that he has sent. With teens, I've put it this way, and this might be a way to unpack this concept of belief. I can look at a chair and believe that it's going to hold me, but I really believe in it. I really trust it when I sit down on it and give my weight to it. And I think it's the same idea here. The work of God is this, to really lean into, to trust the one that he has sent. So they asked him, what sign then will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do? I mean, guys, fish sandwiches. Well, what's going on here? What sign do they need? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. So in the wilderness, God preserved Israel and gave them food as they went out of captivity to Egypt to freedom in the promised land, and gave them this manna every day until they reached the promised land. Very truly, I tell you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven, right? So Moses didn't magically pull it out of his ear. It was God that was supplying this bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Yeah, every morning this manna was spread out for them to pick up. Sir, they said, always give us this bread. And a lot of them are thinking like you and I might, right? Great. Food supplied, fish sandwiches from now on. There won't be any hungry among us. And wouldn't that be fantastic, right? Then Jesus declared, verse 35, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and who believes in me will never be thirsty. So I can meet that hunger and that thirst inside of you, that God-sized thing. And this was the woman at the well that we looked at just a couple chapters ago, right? And I've gone through so many broken relationships. It was God that she was looking for, and that need was met. But as I told you, you have seen me, and still you do not believe. So you got to ratchet it up. You got to go from fish sandwiches to, I can really trust this guy for anything, and they're not there yet. Excuse me. All those the Father gives will come to me, and whoever comes to me I will never drive away. For I have come down from heaven not to do my will, but to do the will of him who sent me. So like Moses, I'm totally focused on God the Father and doing what he wants. And this is the will of him who sent me, that I shall lose none of all those he has given me, but raise them up at the last day. For my Father's will is that everyone who looks to the Son and believes in him shall have eternal life, and I will raise them up at the last day. Verse 40. I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm getting into it pretty far. But eternal life, life through the ages, last day of this age, I will raise him up, and he'll be ready for the age to come. Pretty cool stuff.